Greetings, superior beings, greetings, supreme being. Welcome to Universal Peace Channel, the channel Universal Peace Tube on YouTube. So I had to move to this channel for a number of reasons. About this more in my previous broadcasts. And I thought the light effect is especially nice, so I thought let's immediately start this. Sort of green, like my broadcasting light when it comes on. And this is the broadcast. Drumbeat of war is louder, Israel and Iran on brink of starting World War III. And it's an article review of this article on express.co.uk. Don't know if they are Knights of Malta or like Breivik, basically, if they are Freemasons. Rosicrucians, something like that. And perhaps they want to make war, perhaps they are warriors themselves, basically, knights. That have one goal, that is our first global government, is known as Third Reich, the Jesuit Holocaust, you can Google that. And they do history forgery, so they teach you lies in school. Many people therefore believe, because they've been taught these, quote, taught, unquote, these things in school, that they are true and they really happened. So it's possible Russia is in on creating this world war, the third Jesuit world war, to depopulate Earth to 500 million and rule the world from Jerusalem. But I think most of them might not want a 7-year nuclear winter and to cut themselves off from controlling the factors that control aging in time before they die, leaving them, of course, with eternal nothingness for the rest of eternity, if they do that. So let's read this article, because there is no hereafter, so don't believe their lie that there is a hereafter. It's BS, and why is my broadcasting light flickering? Let's first check that out. So because I'm testing a new channel, etc., there may be problems with the broadcast. Let's just turn on the speech engine and I can check out what's happening.
Drumbeat of war is louder, Israel and Iran on brink of starting World War III. Expert says Iran and Israel are inching towards a full-blown conflict over Tehran's expanding footprint in Syria, raising the odds of a direct clash between the two rivals that could quickly draw in other combatants, according to an expert. February 23, 2018. Israeli PM, we will act against Iran's noose of terror.
Oh yeah, so Iran also did the depleted uranium thing, didn't they? It's, yeah, horrible.
Israeli PM, we will act against Iran's noose of terror.
Brazenness reached new heights, literally new heights. It sent a drone into Israeli territory, violating Israel's sovereignty, threatening our security. We destroyed that drone and the control center that operated it from Syria. And when our planes were fired upon, Israel destroyed Syrian anti-aircraft batteries. Israel will not allow Iran's regime to put a noose of terror around our neck. We will act without hesitation to defend ourselves. And we will act, if necessary, not just against Iran's proxies that are attacking us, but against Iran itself.
Tensions between the two nations have reached an all-time high after an F-16 jet was hit over northern Israel on February 10 as it returned from a raid on a Syrian position that was blamed for launching an Iranian-made drone across the border. Peter Kaertzson, an expert on war and conflicts, said the move had escalated into a major fight as he warned that the drumbeat of war was getting louder. He said, "Can you hear the drumbeat of war? It is getting louder." Mr. Kaertzson said if Iran was to be attacked, Israel would have to take fly through the airspaces of Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Syria or Turkey.
They've sabotaged the taskbar, so I have to press the Windows key to reach the taskbar. And I was thinking, plot to thwart Brexit that maybe controlled opposition to themselves. So they pretend they are against Brexit to prevent any real resistance. So I always say exit Brexit or Nexit. So the Netherlands must leave the EU as well and other countries as well to prevent your Soros' EU superstate being ruled from Brussels instead of The Hague. And it's just a stepping stone to their satanic Luciferian, totalitarian global government. And these people are in on it, you see. They are controlled by them. And they just parrot what that voice inside their heads is telling them to say. So these are not real politicians or your real leaders. They are terrorists and criminals that work with the Lucifer UN, which gets their information from Lucis Trust, former Lucifer Trust. You can check that out as well. I can use a shortcut key to mute it also, supposedly.
The route through Iraq looks like it might be the best option. It comes after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu branded his country's Middle Eastern neighbor the greatest threat to our world. In a speech to the Munich Security Conference, Mr. Netanyahu, "Can you hear the drumbeat of war? It is getting louder." Peter Kaertzson, war and conflicts expert.
Well, if you say, yeah, I can hear it, then they can say, oh, then you're psycho.
He said, none of these Muslim countries will allow Israel to use their airspace, but anti-Iran sentiments are strong in the Sunni-dominated Arab states. Some of them might be willing to look the other way. Iraq is not focused on monitoring its airspace. It has many other problems to deal with and Israel could take advantage of that. The route through Iraq looks like it might be the best option. It comes after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu branded his country's Middle Eastern neighbor the greatest threat to our world. In a speech to the Munich Security Conference, Mr. Netanyahu signaled that he is ready to take action against the country itself, and not just its Middle East allies, if necessary. Tel Aviv said it will press ahead with missions in Syria, where it has launched scores of sorties against suspected arms transfers to Iranian-sponsored Lebanese Hezbollah guerrillas.
No blood for control, and perhaps these writers just want you all to buy a radiological water filter and storable food, so that you are prepared and you will survive it anyway, whether they do it or not. It's not important to be prepared, that's what's important.
Israel and Iran could be on the brink of WW3. Iran is backing Syria in the raging conflict enveloping the region, much to Israel's alarm. Israel has accused Iran of building precision-guided missile factories for Hezbollah in Lebanon. Writing for the Strategic Culture Foundation, Mr. Kaurtson spoke about the real possibility of an outbreak of war if Israel invaded and warned substantial damage would be unavoidable. He said, Israel would wage electronic warfare against Iran's military and civilian infrastructure, such as its electric grids and internet, creating interference with Iran's emergency frequencies. Israel's leader Gidi Benjamin Netanyahu branded his country's Middle Eastern neighbor the greatest threat to our world. Iran protests, hundreds gather in Berlin and Paris calling for regime change. Sun, January 7, 2018. Protesters gathered at Pariser Platz to show their support for the demonstrations in Iran and demand the release of political prisoners as well as the reinstatement of the Shah. Play slideshow. Iranians living in France protest against the Iranian regime. EPA 1 of 8.
The Jesuits and Masons are the biggest threat to our world. These people that want to get rid of 93% of the world's global population. If there are any of those that can push the button. So these intelligence agencies are led by Adolfo Nicholas, as covered in my previous broadcast, and they are the only ones that could have done the WTC and some other things, which was demolished with thermite, but in the form of thermite. It's all in my previous broadcasts. And that stuff you have to know, especially these top 10 of depopulation methods and how to survive them. And that's on my other channel, the channel or BC Hoffman FFN on YouTube. The broadcasting light is still flickering green and red, so perhaps I have to use some other settings. Let's check out the task manager right now. So they're blocking the taskbar because I tested it and it was working before the broadcast. Okay, let's continue the reading while I check out Task Manager. So it takes a while because these creeps sabotage everything. They don't let me select the text and everything. It makes scrolling very slow. That's all done with wireless energy of Nikola Tesla, with microwaves. They make the targeted individuals pretend. So many things that lots of people are claiming are simply not true.
He said, none of these Muslim countries will allow Israel to use their airspace, but anti-Iran sentiments are strong in the Sunni-dominated Arab states. Some of them might be willing to look the other way. Iraq is not focused on monitoring its airspace. It has many other problems.
So many people believe or think to know that Iran is way too insignificant to start a third Jesuit World War over. And furthermore, they are not the countries with loads of weapons of self-destruction. So they cannot be the biggest threat to the world, you could argue, the countries with most nuclear weapons. And of course there's a reason they're not getting rid of these nuclear weapons. They're also ideal to wipe out the internet and all evidence. And I think it's obvious that they've planned that at one point in time or another, clear from the fact that they have not decided to get rid of these nuclear weapons worldwide. Which of course makes sense. So I'm for that, and millions of people are for that. Dismantling all nuclear weapons, disarming. Just playing Superman if you can't create one with your GMO food as a sterilizing murder weapon to depopulate the earth. 37 people died of GMO. Covered in my previous broadcasts, together with the 37 million dead honeybees article, which is a lie they've made to cover up these 37 people died of GMO, genetically modified organisms.
To deal with, and Israel could take advantage of that. The route through Iraq looks like it might be the best option. It comes after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu branded his country's Middle Eastern neighbor the greatest threat to our world. In a speech to the Munich Security Conference, Mr. Netanyahu signaled that he is ready to take action against the country itself, and not just its Middle East allies, if necessary. Tel Aviv said it will press ahead with missions in Syria, where it has launched scores of sorties against suspected arms transfers to Iranian-sponsored Lebanese Hezbollah guerrillas.
Saudi Arabia is going through that line by line. The route through Iraq, or the route through Iraq. Tel Aviv said, well, Tel Aviv itself cannot speak, so then who said that? They write, Tel Aviv said it will press ahead with missions in Syria, where it has launched scores of sorties against suspected arms transfers to Iranian-sponsored Lebanese Hezbollah guerrillas. Aren't they supplying them with weapons themselves? It's, I'd have to check. But that was the thing that I wanted to study, because it doesn't mean they are going to attack all innocent civilians in Syria. But I'm not surprised if they're doing that as well. They want to depopulate Earth and rule the world from Jerusalem. And they haven't punished anybody for the depleted uranium war crime. And now paraplegic children in India from polio Gates oral polio vaccine. They have acute flaccid paralysis, which is worse than polio, from their vaccines. So these killer vaccines are used to depopulate the Earth. The list of pandemics caused by vaccinations makes it clear, and they're continuously lying for their pedomasters, for these Jesuit pedophiles that have murdered my mother and tortured my teeth out of my mouth, and or the brain controlled by them, but we should stop feeling sorry for them and start hitting back. And Abraham stood up and slew the Egyptian for the believers. So when the judges are controlled with directed energy weapons and they are, fair trial is impossible, and then you have to kill these murderers yourself, not to redeem a murder from the death penalty for money, and not to convict anyone without a fair trial means, because you cannot have a fair trial because the judges are controlled with directed energy, torture weapons and synthetic telepathy. That means that you have to do it yourself, basically, if you want anything done. So don't let them play you out against their enemies, the other innocent civilians they want to exterminate. That's their technique, divide to defeat. That's why they want a two-state solution, world war. And they might set themselves up to look like the do-gooders, but in reality they're doing the opposite of what they're pretending to do or to want. So trust no one, nothing is what it seems, test everything you learn, recovery begins with non-compliance. Transforming reactive to proactive behavior begets lasting fulfillment.
Iran and Israel, World War III. Getty, Israel and Iran could be on the brink of WW3. Iran is backing Syria in the raging conflict enveloping the region, much to Israel's alarm. Israel has accused Iran of building precision-guided missile factories for Hezbollah in Lebanon. Writing for the Strategic Culture Foundation, Mr. Kaertson spoke about the real possibility of an outbreak of war if Israel invaded and warned substantial damage would be unavoidable. He said, Israel would wage electronic warfare against Iran's military and civilian infrastructure, such as its electric grids and internet, creating interference with Iran's emergency frequencies. Israel's leader Gedi Benjamin Netanyahu branded his country's Middle Eastern neighbor the greatest threat to our world. Iran protests, hundreds gather in Berlin.
So what would Russia do if they do that? It's an ally of Iran. So I advise them to first have an agreement with Russia, with Putin, with their leaders, supposed leaders, which some people of course don't accept as our leaders. They lead themselves. And they know these leaders, quote leaders unquote, are in fact controlled slaves with their own handlers. And they were put there is no left and no right. In reality, they're both controlled by the same Jesuits and Masons. Otherwise they wouldn't be in that position.
In Paris calling for regime change. Sun, January 7, 2018. Protesters gathered at Platz to show their support for the demonstrations in Iran and demand the release of political prisoners as well as the reinstatement of the Shah. Play slideshow. Iranians living in France protest against the Iranian regime. EPA 1 of 8.
It reminds me of the paid protesters. Are they paid as well? Protestondemand.com and other websites. And how do you know? There are not many people who would claim no, they're not, because they haven't seen this before, they don't know about protest on demand, etc. So many people would immediately deny it, though they don't have any evidence to back their claim.
Iranians living in France protest against the Iranian regime. Iranians living in France protest against the Iranian regime. Protesters hold signs and flags of the Iranian constitutional monarchy era as they protest near Brandenburg Gate in Berlin. Protests against Iran in Berlin. Iranians living in France protest against the Iranian regime. People demonstrate in solidarity with anti-government protests in Iran near the Iranian embassy in Paris. People demonstrate in solidarity with anti-government protests in Iran near the Iranian embassy in Paris. People demonstrate in front of the Brandenburg Gate to support protests across Iran, in Berlin. After the war has begun, Israel will come under rocket and missile attack from Iran's proxies, Hamas in the Gaza Strip and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Hezbollah has up to 150,000 rockets that can reach anywhere in Israel. It is true, however, that Israel possesses a sophisticated, multi-layer, air defense shield. A first-class intelligence and early warning system will mitigate the fallout, but substantial damage will be unavoidable. But Mr. Kaurtson warned that a conflict between Israel and pro-Iranian forces would douse the light at the end of the tunnel so recently kindled after Russia, Turkey and Iran agreed peace talks over the ongoing Syrian conflict. He added, once the shooting starts, all that work will go down the drain. This scenario could be prevented. As we have seen in some other situations, Russia is the only actor capable of effectively mediating. The US has become openly hostile toward Tehran and may have a hidden agenda in which peace is not the goal. There may be forces interested in sparking any conflict that would exacerbate the situation in Syria and bring a large-scale war against Iran even closer. Related articles. Prince Charles steps into Queen's shoes to host academic prize fair. Fab Four back together. Meghan and Harry join Kate and Wales unite. EU split, just 12 leaders invited to swanky pre-summit dinner, and Iran World War III Syria recommended stories Life After Death, No Heaven Just Infinite Sadness, Blackness and the Knowledge I'm Dead Life After Death, No Heaven Just Infinite Sadness, Blackness and the Knowledge I'm Dead Donald Trump tries to hold Melania Trump's hand but fails again in awkward footage Donald Trump tries to hold Melania Trump's hand but fails again in awkward footage Pentagon UFO bombshell, SETI experts break silence over world-changing alien evidence Pentagon UFO bombshell, SETI experts break silence over world-changing alien evidence recommended by recommendations powered by Plista Paul Pogba reveals what's really wrong in Manchester. United fans could be shocked Barcelona news, Philippe Coutinho tells Lionel Messi that Real Madrid transfer will happen Robert Lewandowski to Liverpool, Bayern Munich deal could happen after huge development popular in the community.
Yes. So now I can mute and unmute. What else do I have to do? Pause the speech engine. And for that I need to press that Windows key to get the taskbar to show. So it was hanging before and then I closed some ups and I thought it was fixed. It was not hanging anymore. And it can be caused by an app or whatever. Perhaps messages on the things you have to read. So if they really want to prevent a world war over Iran, then I think they will first have an agreement with the Russians before they do anything. And I've covered that in my previous broadcast. I covered that they had no list of suspect sites which they need to be able to do any inspections. So how can they already know that they don't allow inspections in one of their facilities when they didn't even have the list and haven't even attempted to do so? So that may indicate they've planned this third Jesuit world war over Iran. As you can see in my previous broadcasts on my other YouTube channel, that's covered by the New York Times, as well as Trump's plans to spend $1 trillion on nuclear weapons instead of controlling the factors that control aging. And also on a fake trip to Mars, of course, of the NASA Masons. So these are their bodies, and they're going to depopulate you all, you'll see. So just prepare, there's no reason not to prepare. With the radiological water filter especially, and storable food, peanut butter, rice, etc.
It is deeply troubling that instead of stopping Assad's slaughter of his population in Syria, Iran's religious leadership actually assists him in the daily slaughter of women, children and whole families, as does Russia and its leadership. The world will have to deal with these ruthless dictatorships. There is no world where such massive crimes against humanity can be acceptable. Reply, share, report, 10 likes. We should not get involved, let them sort it out. Reply, share, report, 2 likes. Let's sit this one out and not poke our nose in. Reply, share, report. Tehran's expanding footprint in Syria. How about Israel's expanding footprint outside of their original border, increasing every year, which in the past resulted in them killing and torturing British troops?
So, that was the article, and then there are some other articles. I might do a separate broadcast about it. The Wall Street Journal reports Russia's attack on US troops. Putin's mercenaries are bloodied in Syria as he tries to drive Trump out. And New York Times writes, a hardline supporter of Israel offers to pay for US embassy in Jerusalem. So of course the Israeli people and Prime Minister have to decide what they want the capital of Israel to be. Not the American or any other president from some other country. That's weird. And many people might think that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, not Tel Aviv. I don't know how many, to do an opinion poll. So, I can read this in separate broadcasts, why not? Review the article. So, lots of people think it's probably best not to get involved, to just avoid any risk of starting a third Jesuit World War. To avoid the 7-year nuclear winter and 7 billion people from dying. So they don't feel much for that themselves. And they've probably planned sanctions, not a world war for Iran. But it's still better to be prepared with a radiological water filter and storable food. Okay. I'm not prepared enough for that either. And if the goal is depopulation, we might not hear a siren before the nukes blow us all away. Well, I think we probably would, that these pedophiles want to survive it themselves. They of course have a bomb shelter, and storable food, and radiological water filter. And they even have underground cities. So they would survive it anyway, if it would remain confined to a nuclear war and the scalar weapons wouldn't be used. But of course, I think during times of war you would lose control of these people as well, that they would start fighting back and destroy these pedophiles that are responsible for this war, these Jesuits and Masons that have infiltrated your government. And it's clear they're not arresting them. but rather pretend that they are honorable people, etc. So, oh yeah, single ladies are welcome. Also, it's a nice sunny day. Please like and subscribe, especially to this channel. I must build up subscribers on this new channel, Universal Peace channel. I want to avoid any racist, anti-Semitic and homophobic statements. So I would appreciate it if you don't make them in my broadcast. Also, live Skype callers don't make any remarks that are racist, anti-Semitic or homophobic. Because then this YouTube channel can be banned after 3 strikes. And I think it's important to maintain this channel to promote controlling factors that control aging instead of spending $1 trillion more on nukes, nuclear weapons, weapons of self-destruction, and all that shit we really don't need, like fake trips to Mars. So we must inform other people to spread the knowledge, to form true resistance, to unite. If we don't unite and have a plan, and if we do not act, then we are acted upon, George Orwell. So males can also